today's presentation from Sufi Lyrics in the Egyptian Desert, my latest book, the theme will be the religion of love, because that's chiefly what the Sufis have taught me. And what is a Sufi? Sufism, Sufist thought and practice originated as a kind of mysticism in Islam. Then they acquired considerable influences from Hinduism, and there are some Sufis who have called themselves Christians. The point of Sufi thinking and poetizing, imagining, is to try to transcend all the formulated religions that have names. So, my first teacher was Omar. In fact, the title even has the subsection, 90 Poems in Modified Omar, quatrain form. And Omar is a medieval Sufi poet who was translated by the Victorian Englishman Edward FitzGerald in the most famous book, I hope you've heard of it, called The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Rubaiyat are quatrains. A rubaiyat is a four-liner or a four-line stanza, and it happens that Edward FitzGerald's Rumi introduces the theme, which I find predominant in all my favorite works of Sufism, namely that of the religion of love, and he does so in what turns out to be a world-class love song, also one of the shortest, a four-liner. You may have heard it already. Whether you have or not, here it goes. A book of verses underneath the bough, a jug of wine, a loaf of bread, and thou beside me singing in the wilderness. Oh, wilderness were paradise enow. So, a wilderness would be paradise enough if it contained a loaf of bread, a jug of wine, and you singing word songs with me from a book of verses. That's interesting, isn't it? Did you see me conducting for Persian Sufi poets? A poem is a word song. It's a song made out of words. It just doesn't happen to have pitches except those you give it as it goes along. No required pitches as in a tune, but they are musical. So that's the way he writes. And you notice a book of verses underneath the bough. That's 5 beats, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, the famous iambic pentameter that we know so well from Shakespeare. Now, when I copy Omar, I have tried to sweeten the music even more than what he has achieved. What I do is I take the last beat off, and I only have in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. What that does, very interesting, it speeds up the tempo of presentation by 20%, and because the rhymes come sooner, they seem to be coming towards you more often, and so what you could call the density of rhymes per minute is increased, and the harmonies are tighter, and the harmony more intense. Does that make sense? Yes, I hope so. Okay, here goes my attempt to carry on the Omar tradition. So went the caravan. I guess I said cavern because I was thinking of a lonely, secluded place. And at the beginning of the poem, the speaker is quite unhappy. So went the caravan away. I'm robbed. You're gone. I'm made to stay. All gaps are filled with stifling sand. All tapers quenched at close of day. One light alone remains at hand. Our fate, it lets me understand. The sandstorm climbing comes and goes with motion none may countermand. But as before, when might arose in form of sand or light for those who in themselves believed, will we rejoin the caravan we chose. What lives in you and sings in me is will and wind and deity and soul that in the storm will sway, simoom and moon and cold and ray. That's a love song. But it's also a song of love to the universe, isn't it? The totality of life. We'll take whatever it has, whatever sandstorm and simoom, which is a particularly cruel sort of desert wind, comes and hits you in the face. We'll live with that because we have what it takes. We in ourselves believe, and that comes before all the other beliefs. My friend Shahid Alam, who's one of my mentors I'll be referring to later, friend Shahid Alam said that his Sufi grandmother told him the following: read the Quran that is in your heart. And as a matter of fact, when you read the Quran that's in print, you find that the Prophet Muhammad, when asked to read the Quran, he was illiterate. He thought it was a devil asking him rather than an angel, refused at first, but eventually Sufi tradition holds that he read the love of God in his heart, because the Quran does not mention him reading from any document. It says he read, but doesn't say anything about material object from which the printed script would be written upon. So that's a quite remarkable thing. It prepared itself for this wonderful Sufi interpretation. Read the Quran that is within you. Let me show you another of my attempts to give you an insight into, or just simply a practice of, the religion of love as Omar has taught me to do it. The courtyard filled with leaves and blooms. You think an early autumn looms? The watchman likes me not, and yet my summer hut has empty rooms. How often did his head he set upon my threshold, teardrop wet? The settling, dampened dust he kissed, and then my hairlock amulet. O golden sky of amethyst, inform me why enfolding mist has wrapped me round, my bones to chill in woe for him I so have missed. O Allah, may your holy will return my soul to me, that still, when autumn goes and winter glooms, we too may flourish, healed of ill. It's not an affirmation, but it is a prayer uttered in confidence. Now, I would like to develop this idea of the religion of love because it has many manifestations and some of them quite striking. Here's a poem, let me see which one it is, where I have written up a love song about a woman's love for God. She's dancing before God, and she does this at a most unusual time because it's the end of the world, and the Day of Judgment is scheduled to start shortly. And how is she spending her time in preparation? She's dancing. Our worldly life was at an end. The day of reckoning, my friend explained, arrived with judgment nigh. The dancer hands would high extend, with gems where scintillations lie. Her eyes with lightning toward the sky, a sparkle too, and each a well where opposites would heightened vie, more dark and deep than Iblis' hell. Her art would keep that wizard spell till God might like to stop her, for she gave her all, so all was well. Surrender, said the Lord, the more will joy the one who'd life restore. What would you have? Your pardon lend, to you I heart and mind outpour. There's a statement we might be proud to make at the end of the world, which could come at any time. Now, in the next poem, another manifestation. Here, a man is more traditionally in love with a woman, but as he describes and evokes his love for her, the love somehow expands and extends, and somehow she becomes the spirit of the world. She becomes the universe. This is quite characteristic of Sufi poetry, and I have appropriated that tradition freely because I value it. In a Sufi love poem, most commonly you cannot tell whether the addressee is a human being or ultimate being. The eyes that light the sky of her, whom thrilled the singer will prefer, the stars on cloudless night recall. Her smile yet more the mind may stir, for now the mighty dawn of all, the waited daylight came, the pall of dark to pierce, by lengthened spear of love, whom felled the wisest fall, in prayer to praise, while bright and clear the cleaver of the daybreak near they feel, and yes, the prophet too, that rode the steed of lightning. We're the blessed indeed at morning, who resplendent light aborning through the veil of haze, a harbinger of the glory life adorning view. Cleaver of the daybreak is a traditional Quranic name for God. It also describes the sun. Rumi's best friend and spiritual comrade was named Shams, which means sun. That's very nice. To Rumi, it meant both God and human. It meant the fusion of both. Oh, I have something rather exciting for my last and most expansive development of this idea of religion of love. This is number 90 in my sequence of 90. I put it on the back cover so it wouldn't be missed. I would call it a song of love for the unnameable. A vast and mighty wind passed through my hair and eyes and mind. I knew it was a moment only, though undimmed the flare, unmuted blue the summons. You that made me grow and want me to the world to show a tone, a word. What shiver shook the body soul and loved it so? O blood tone of our ocean brook, and pounding heart and lightning look, if at this moment I should die, there's none will say that I mistook what might all sighing justify, the lifelines that before you lie. Inhale again the heaven blue, blessed every breath, west heading cry. I was happy when I thought of the lifelines. They are the lines of poetry. Now, Omar develops the religion of love in another way too. There's love for the human being. There's love for animals and plants and all the created universe, and or as the Quran likes to say, worlds, pluriverse. There's also love for the ultimate being, however that may be inadequately, but with partial correctitude, labeled or named. And the love that goes perhaps a little further is the love for every moment of every day of your life. This is the Carpe Diem, or seize the day, theme that we got also from Roman poet Horace. And when Omar writes about this, he's at his very best. Omar was a skeptical young man, and he sought long and hard for something worthwhile to know and sing about ultimate being. And he talks about how he visited all the professors and exactly how fruitful or fruitless that proved to be. And listen to what he says. Myself, when young, did eagerly frequent, that means attend, visit, doctor, that means teacher, and sage. Let's try again. Myself, when young, did eagerly frequent doctor and sage, and heard great element about it and about, but evermore came out by the same door as in I went. With them the seed of wisdom did I sow, and with mine own hand labored it to grow. And here is all the harvest that I reaped. I came like water, and like wind I go. Now, ever since I first read those lines in high school and got a shiver on the reading of them, they have stuck in my mind. And so one of my poems here actually begins with that, with those very words. Like water come, like wind I go. Thick fluid into womb did flow, that for a little while a bit of life I, liquid-eyed, might know. I'm framed of earth, so may I sit on reddened clay and think of it. A source of growth in woken day, long home when age will find this fit. I'm shaped of air, in shade to play, and sound from psaltery convey, and breathing calmly feel the deep, from whence awoke the breaking ray. But searing flame, you vigil keep, in seething speech, the will, the leap, the glance, the glimmer, and the glow, the glimpse before the dreamy sleep. Well, that's a nice way, isn't it, to conclude part one of this presentation, which is Omar, my first mentor in the Sufi religion of love. And now I will have three more mentors, all of them from the Middle Ages, Ibn Arabi and Rumi and Rabia, two men and one woman. First, we're going to begin with Ibn Arabi. That is a wonderful thing to do. He is a great expositor of Sufism. William Chichik, the Sufi expert, has called Ibn Arabi the most influential person in the second half of Islamic history. It begins with some remarks because I had been thinking about the curlew bird that was with me always in Egypt. I never saw it because it was very high up on the roof, but it would wake me up in the morning and, so to speak, sing me to sleep at night. I used to imitate the call all day long because I liked it so much and I thought I'd never forget it. Now I wish I had written down the notes. I have no idea what it sounded like anymore. The curlew painted poem 8 is heard at early dawn and late at dusk, then waking now for sleep upon the roof, though tired, elate. Ibn Arabi, most kind, will keep me company with wisdom deep. His lines in rhymes I'll recompose, receive and write, twin bliss to reap. My heart can all the forms enclose, it monk's cell, idol temple knows, gazelle grazed mead and Kaaba stone, Quran and Torah tablet, rose of love in you belief I own, where love his camels drove, alone I'll never be, for me they wait, a faith, a law, my love has grown. Here it's the camels of love. I read another version where he talks about the horse of love. He says, get on that horse and ride wherever it takes you. Now, on the facing page, I have a Rumi. The theme of union doubly far has Rumi taken. Naught could bar the writer whose emboldened cry, all things enfolded, worm to star. Where lovers are, I'll be nearby. To Muslim, Christian hermit, I am near, with vineyard, singer gift, drink, drunkard bliss, and humble sigh. The 72 sects no rift enforce, for by the Lord I lift my spirit in them all, in me coarse elements, the four, the swift, both what will please and make one flee. Belief, ascesis, piety, the hellfire, houris none can mar. Earth, Iblis, Eden, I'm all three. Iblis is an Islamic way of referring to hell. So heaven, hell, and earth, they're all in here. It reminds me of Walt Whitman in Song of Myself. He assures you that the song that he's singing is not about the self that is contained, as he puts it, between my hat and boots. So, let's give you one more from Rumi. Rumi was a humble man. He wrote more movingly from the mystical point of view of love than perhaps anyone has ever done, certainly more prolifically. There was no more productive mystical poet in the history of our planet. But here he takes second place to his friend and colleague, Poet Attar. Of Poet Attar, Rumi said, "He 7 cities visited of love, while through a single street, a moment only, have I sped. The world outspread, the god will greet. No angel with his winged feet 1/100th of the lover's art will come to see, however fleet. The call to prayer me apart would summon to the larger heart of him for whom the 1 in 2 will dwarf the lore of Amor's dart." That's the Roman Cupid. That's my remark. I'm thinking that the love of the 99 names of God goes somewhat beyond the Cupid idea. The 99 in me, in you, can only hope to fill the view when by the prismed iris led to bathe in ray of rainbow dew. The color of love is that of the rainbow. So, Ibn Arabi and Rumi. And now, thirdly, I promised there was a woman in the group. She is one of the most astonishing figures in the history of world religion. You'll see why in just half a minute. I'll tell you the basic story about her. She would wander through the streets of Basra with a bucket of water with lots of water sloshing around inside in one hand, and in the other hand she held a smoldering and flaming torch. And naturally, when people went up to her and asked her what she thought she was doing, she said, "I intend to drown hell and to burn up heaven. And I'll tell you why. I prayed recently that I might be rewarded with heaven if I led the good life. And guess what? I felt the door of it slam into my face. Then I prayed to escape at least the tortures of hell. And guess what? My skin was seared with the flames of hell. And what did I learn? I should not be asking for any of those distractions which I just mentioned. I should be asking for God himself alone and nothing else, because there's nothing to be loved but the beauty of the nature of God." I doubt that you've ever heard anything quite that forceful on that theme before, and it's a very remarkable contribution that Rabia has made. So here's what I write as I'm trying to appropriate her voice for my poetry. Just pure surrender, that's enough. Don't seek your worldly lot to slough aside to gain the sky, nor fear a hell, said Rabia. So tough to like the life you're leading here? If Islam means surrender, and that is what it means, we're intended then to be content as daffodil and chanticleer. That's the rooster greeting the sky in the morning. Throughout the town she daily went with fire and bucket. Why? They're meant to burn up heaven, hell to drown, quell fright and longing, minds unpent will daily wear no duller crown than heaven lends, nor be cast down. Your fear is hell itself. Less rough our Sufi wool than silken gown. Some people derive the word Sufi from the rough wool habits that they wore. It's a kind of monkish order, monastic order Sufism. She says that your luxurious silks won't give you any comfort so long as you are plagued with fears in your head, which are illusory, because the heaven that you hope for and the hell that you fear are as illusory as your pointless hopes and fears. Love God alone. Here's one more on the theme, because I like the theme. O Lord, I hope each worldly thing you only to your foes will bring, and gifts of heaven to those held dear. I love you for yourself, my King. Lord, if I pray while filled with fear of hell, it's hell my soul will sear. When craving paradise I pray, the door will close and death appear. But when at waking of the day, I pouring forth my heart can say, I love you for your own dear sake. I see your face that flames array. To rob myself, the great mistake. Yet I, the nightingale, awake to fragrance of the bloom in spring, when you, my rose, through coldness break. I was more or less quoting, very rather precisely paraphrasing Rabia all the way through the poem, and until I got to the end, where I introduced on my own behalf the traditional Islamic theme of the nightingale singing to the rose. The nightingale is this emblem of the seeking soul, and the rose emblemizes the vision of God that he has attained. Now, for my third and last part of this presentation, I would like to introduce my neighbor at Sekem. He is named Shahid Alam, and he is a calligraphic artist. He made the painting for the cover of this book. It says in Arabic, he writes Arabic statements or proverbs or scripture quotations on his painting, so that it's not the total artwork is not only visible but readable. And this one says, strike your tents and open your hearts to one another. To me, this means, if the night was for sheltered enclosure, let daytime be now for united sharing. Also, he made a calligraphy of the word Sufi. Here it is, written in Arabic. Isn't that something? It looks rather funny. There's an eye with a comical expression, and there's quite a lot of humor in Sufism. Let's see what I learned from Shahid. I have learned a very great number of stories that are traditional, some not scriptural, others are, from various folk traditions that growing up in India and speaking Urdu, he learned about both in song and in word. He sang to me in Urdu and German, and then he would translate what he just said. He also would let's see what else besides the songs. Oh yes, he told stories, and sometimes he would just raise up his hands and compose something on the spot. This is a traditional story which is widespread and a very important and perfect for the theme of the religion of love. It is the month of Ramadan. The quailing fasters barely can perform their sacred duty when the heat increases. The Quran had made the fast required of men. But if a child would try, what then? And here is one who's begging for the chance. He asks again. The father wisely must deplore the suffering. Yet after more importuning, all right. Next day the boy will join the grown-ups' war against the blear and beating ray, a plague to waste the heart away. He wants to fast, to be a man. He'll try, but what will Allah say? 'Tis 3 o'clock. The child has died. The crowd with grief are mortified. Around the body of the dead and blessed boy, they've sobbed and sighed and groaned and cried. Their hearts have bled. They tore their garments and they said, forgive our wrongs, great Lord on high, and mournful prayed before the bed. A wretched beggar happened by, with face enwrapped in rags. A cry reverberated from the throng. God loves the ones who give, then why should we not help a human who has suffered as have we? They view as tribute not to be denied the welcoming of beggars too. He's coming in. Deep quiet reigns. The beggar rapt attention gains of ear and eye, of old and young. For mercy, life divine attains. The beggar says with holy tongue a word or two. The folk, high-strung and tense with wretched pain and stress, look on as beautiful and young. Alive the youth awakes. Ah, bless the God above, whose gentleness a wonder thing to us had brought, that strength may every ill redress. They hugged the boy, yet no one's thought to note another wonder wrought. The beggar's flown. What joy remains will never be by these forgot. You never know when an angel may show up. Here's another one that comes from what Shahid was telling me. The coachman told, this is a very well-known poem. I've come upon this in several sources since then. The coachman told the glowing rose and morning nightingale disclose the way through love we come to be, the one that only Allah knows. A hunter in captivity can find the bird. How cruelly the human had the all defied. One cannot understand it. We, the dawn, the wind, the starlight side, must feel the spirit here has died. The blossom and the nightingale bewept the hate that heart denied. Their tears, when they their woes bewail, are holy, nor will fate them fail. Cage molten, out the victim goes, proud liberty the lovers hail. Yes, well, it brings to mind a song of Shakespeare's time called Weeping Willow. Her soft tears fell from her, and her salt tears fell from her and softened the stones. So the weeping of the rose and the nightingale can soften and melt the steel bars of a cage. Now, for the last one, I would like to read you this poem. I should point out before we begin that it contains at the end an allusion to something you may not be familiar with. And this is the what you might call the Romeo and Juliet of the East, Majnun and Layla. Majnun fell in love with Layla, but their families were clans who were at war. And so they couldn't allow these two young people to be married on account of their social prejudices. And so Layla was allowed to stay in the city, but Majnun was sentenced to exile in the desert. And what did he do there? He spent his days writing her name in the sand and watching the wind blow it away. Now, Layla means night, and even Majnun has a meaning which suggests that it's not really a name, but a description that people applied to him. Majnun means bejinned, somebody who is possessed by a jinn. In Yiddish, a word taken over into the German language also, it would be mishuger. The guy was crazy. Goethe, by the way, Germany's greatest poet, wrote a poem about this in which he says, "Is it true that Majnun means mad? Could this man have properly been called insane?" Well, all I have to say about that is, if he's crazy, then put me in the madhouse too, because I am devoted equally as he to the religion of love. So now you're ready for the poem. My friend, called witness of the world, a vision has for me unfurled. Upon a page more white than flame, I write the scene where I'm enswirled. Unweighted to our courtyard came the pouring sand, no jinn to blame. Let's view it as an Allah sign that you and I our fate must claim. We're summoned by a will divine, no more than crowded towns confine. The caravan remain we bound in cloud banks sullen, saturnine. Upon the sandy desert ground we'll footprints leave. Majnun so found, impassioned, into freedom hurled, the soul of Layla, wind in wound.